So, what should you do if you or your spouse are diagnosed with dementia? Hi, my name is Claire Langton-Yanowitz, and I'm an attorney at the Yanowitz Law Firm, where we've been helping families for the last 30 years with wills, trusts, and probate. Okay, let's get started. So, you or your spouse recently have had a dementia diagnosis, and it can be one of the hardest times in life. And we get a lot of calls from families at this time. Do I need to do anything? What can I do to kind of prepare for what's to come? And so I wanted to create this video because there are a number of steps that you can take at that time. Most of the time, when people get a dementia diagnosis, they're not completely incapacitated. They're a bit forgetful, but they still living more of a normal life. So it's a really good time to set up an appointment at our firm. And here's a couple of things that we're going to talk to you about. First of all, we want to know that the plan you have in place is what you still want. It's oftentimes it's easy to sign an estate plan 10, 15 years ago and to just kind of put it on a shelf and to not look at it because life gets busy and you don't end up looking at it. So it's a good time to revisit that plan and consider, okay, does this plan that I crafted, does it still make sense? Is this still what I want? So we need to look and see who inherits, how much they're inheriting, who's acting on your behalf if you signed your estate plan a long time ago. Is it still up to date with the laws in place? Oftentimes, when we're looking at who's acting on your behalf, there is a life cycle with estate planning. When people are younger, folks have a tendency to name people who are their same age or maybe older. They're naming their brothers and sisters or mom and dad. But as life evolves, people will name people that are younger and younger in their estate plan. So that means they may be naming children. Maybe a long time in the future, you might be naming grandchildren in different roles. So looking on who is acting on that behalf. Now, if you are a trustee and you have a trust, it's often a good idea to at least have a co-trustee acting with you. So, as things evolve with your situation, that there's someone else with their hand on the steering wheel who's a trusted contact that can help make sure that, things don't fall apart. At this point, we also sometimes consider whether the person who's diagnosed with dementia should resign as trustee. Dementia can manifest in many different ways. Sometimes people become confused. Sometimes people may take steps that might hurt themselves if they're given a lot of power. So sometimes people might choose in this situation to resign as trustee. And every time we are changing the trustees, we want to let all your financial institutions know that, okay, we've named somebody else as co-trustee. So they know that that person, that child, that nephew, that niece, whoever is acting with you as co-trustee, that they have authority should they need to do something on your behalf. Then we also want to look over your powers of attorney and healthcare directives. We want to make sure that the people named in those documents are who you still want acting on your behalf. We also want to make sure that the contact information of the people named in those documents is up to date and correct. Oftentimes, if a healthcare directive was signed a long time ago, cell phone numbers weren't included in them, people move, that sort of thing. So it's important that those are up to date, because the idea is that there may become a time in the future where you're not able to re-sign some of these documents. Now, when you have accounts at different institutions, you might want to look into setting up each account so that there is a trusted contact or a power of attorney on each individual account. So sometimes institutions will let you put down a trusted contact that can communicate with the institution should you need something. So this can be in addition to naming a co-trustee. It can be in addition to having just like a Minnesota statutory power of attorney. It gives wherever you have your money authority to interact with that trusted contact that you've named. Another important step is to just make sure you let your family or your trusted friends know where all your assets are. It can be a huge amount of time to trying to track down where someone's assets are if that isn't, easily conveyed to them when you have the capacity to do so. So it's important to, write all of that down. And then it's also a good opportunity to make sure that your property is titled correctly. So when we look at that, we look for it in a couple of things. First of all, if you're trying to avoid probate, is your property titled correctly so that you'll avoid probate at your death? Probate can be costly and time consumptive, and so there can be a lot of reasons to avoid it. Now, sometimes we might recommend moving property to the spouse, if you're married, to the spouse who doesn't have the dementia diagnosis. Sometimes that can make sense so that they're more easily able to transact on that account. However, if the person with dementia diagnosis has a shortened life expectancy, sometimes it's good to move appreciated assets into their name, because when people die, they get a step up in basis equal to what the asset is worth as of the person's date of death. And so therefore, for income tax purposes, it actually can be good to kind of load up the share of the person with the shorter life expectancy with sometimes more assets. Now, you would only want to do this if there aren't any medical assistance considerations. So these are kind of challenging things to evaluate, something that people are not really able to do very well on their own. So it's important to kind of get the guidance of an attorney of, how should I be retitling things? Who should own it if I'm married or not? Am I set up to properly avoid probate? So all good things to think about. Now, if you happen to own a business or have like a cabin, one of those kind of family heirlooms, it's important to think about, is the next generation, is it time to kind of have the next generation take over those assets? That's something else to consider. Is there a certain child who would want it, or children? Or does everybody want to co-own it? So that's a good time to have conversations about that. It can be helpful to prepay funerals at this time, as well as communicate end of life wishes to your family, or if you have any funeral wishes and celebration of life wishes, getting those down on pen and paper or talking to your family about it so that it's less overwhelming, that they can just kind of carry out your wishes and not have to kind of wonder what you wanted. Thank you so much for listening today. If you have a dementia diagnosis, know we are here to help. Give us a call at 507-252-8997, and we look forward to helping you. Thank you.